So in this video, I just want to explain the difference between using binding to display a score in a user interface and using an event dispatcher, and the difference it makes towards its like tick activity. In this game, I've got, see where it says steps and bank steps. So you get a point, get one, right? Them scores are going up. They're using an event dispatcher, but the bank score is using a binding. So banked there, that's got the binding of basically this binding. So it's getting the third person character bank score and it's returning it to display this score. And the main score is using an event dispatcher, which is only reacting when the event is called. So on here, look, when I get the normal score, it's going to say not a tick, right? So on the binding one, I'm going to do a print string from this, and we're just going to say, I am using tick. This is going to show you how often it's being called. So bear in mind, the main score is being used all the time because I'm always collecting the points, and the bank score is only being used when I bank the score, right? But look, right, when I press play, I am using tick, I am using tick, I am using tick. I'm not using tick, I'm not using tick, right? So basically what that's saying is that this bank score is being constantly called, even when it's not being used. Look, I'm not using the bank score, but it's just running. I'm using tick. I'm not using tick. And the I'm not using tick is when it's getting the other score. So basically, a lot of tutorials will show you to use this binding here, create binding, but you'd never really want to create bindings in your user interfaces. It's like, I've noticed that when you're doing like percentages, so there was a game that I was working on where it's calculating the accuracy, and when it's creating the accuracy, because it's constantly having to calculate an accuracy, a binding kind of works well for that. I mean, you could create an event dispatcher for percentage and accuracy, but the binding is kind of all right, because for an accuracy to work, it has to be constantly sort of calculating. But when you're just adding scores up in integers and stuff, you don't want to be using these bindings. You want to be using event dispatchers, and event dispatchers are pretty, once you work out how they're being used, they are pretty easy. So say, for example, I'll just show you how I'm using this event dispatcher. In my third person character, I've got several event dispatchers now. I mean, I'm not an expert in event dispatchers, by the way. So there's probably a lot easier ways to do what I've done here, but I've got quite a few event dispatchers there. But I've got this one is score, right? And it just has an input of an integer over here, look. And then every time there's a situation where my score is added, so when you walk on a box, or say, for example, you pick up this +6 score here, it adds 6. And when you shoot the little bomb people, these rockets, when you shoot them, you get a score. So every time when you're adding the score up, all you need to do is call the event. So this is, say, for example, the bomb score. When you shoot this bomb score, you get +5 of your score. You set it like you normally would, but then you drag it off and you just put call score. But because the event dispatcher is in the third person character, you do need to bind it to the third person character. So like, I am coming from this, dragging out and going call, and then I'm going call is score, which is that one there. And then I'm bringing that integer, which is the integer variable for my score, into the event dispatcher. And then that's just calling that and letting everyone else know that's on this event dispatcher messaging bit to update the score, right? So then what you do is you go into your user interface, and this 0 here which is the score. It's a variable, is score. You need to make it a variable. But look, if you notice, there's no binding on it. It just says text 0. Go into your graph. And most of the time, if you've got a user interface, you will be cast into your player. So, and if you're not, you just need to cast to your third person character on the event construct, get player character, then come out of third person character, and now you're not calling it. You want to create an event based on when it's called. So instead of call the event dispatcher, you bind event to. So see, now I've got bind event to is score, right? So then I'll just show you. So I've dragged this all the way over here. This one is this one, right? So we can delete that there. Drag out of this and custom event, and then you add a custom event, which is this here. You call it whatever you want. And then the custom event, because the event dispatcher, you've created the input, whatever input you've got. Now look, that's the input that I made. So that sort of becomes an output, I suppose. So then you just drag out of here and you get the is score variable that you made, which would be that 0. And that's that variable here. You drag off here, set text. Use this one, set text, which is this one. And then from score now, you drag out of there and drag into there, and it will create the to text integer. So basically it's just turning an integer into text, and then that will mount up your scores. Good thing about event dispatchers and user interfaces as well is you can create animations based on that event. So every time I score 1 point, if you look at the score now, look, it's actually animating it as well. So where it says step 0, it will say step 1, and it's sort of growing. See? So yeah, that's it. This isn't a tutorial to make event dispatchers. I have got a tutorial about event dispatchers. Actually, I'll put the link at the end of this video. But I just wanted to explain how the binding is calling it every single frame. It's calling it on the tick basically. But event dispatchers is only calling it when it needs to be called. So they're way more efficient. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And if you do want to watch about the event dispatchers, it should be like here, I think, or here, or probably here. Thanks. And oh, mate, no, maybe there. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.